You are listening to the Pencil and Paper Podcast Network.
Hey Ramblers, today's episode is brought to you by Fangoria. Since 1979, Fangoria has been the authority in the world of contemporary horror. As the only sanctuary for horror aficionados in its early days, it has now grown into an empire that expands beyond its celebrated magazine. From t-shirts, coffee mugs, beanies, enamel pins, there's something for every horror fanatic in your world, even if it's you. So head on over to shop.fangoria.com/pencil and paper productions or use code pencil and paper productions at checkout to get 20% off your first order or magazine subscription. Yes, it is a mouthful, which is why there are links in the show notes down below. That's shop.fangoria.com/pencil and paper productions or code pencil and paper productions at checkout for 20% off. Fangoria, first in fright since 1979.
Buy it or we'll tear your soul apart.
You're listening to the Horror Ramblings podcast, the show about all things horror. We hope you enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Horror Ramblings podcast, the show about, you've guessed it, all things horror. As always, it's your host, Lester, joined by the astounding Stephen White. How are you today, Stephen?
I'm very good, thank you. Thank you so much for introducing us on this show today. I didn't realize we were going so posh.
You know, we could do the whole show this way if we wanted to, but I feel like that would be a little exhausting.
A little bit, maybe. But who knows? Maybe people want a posh horror show.
You know, in a weird sort of way, it kind of works with the subject we're talking about today, because the voices sort of remind me of a certain show that I've heard of before.
Well, if we're going to do that, I mean, one of us could hit on something a little bit more brazen, as it were. If we want to start talking about weird vampire shtick, sure. Or we could go down the other route and start talking like this. And how dare you, Guillermo? I can't believe you. Anyway.
If people haven't figured it out, we are going to talk about something amazing today. What we do in the shadows, which is amazing. I cannot talk about how much I love the show. You pulled the rug out from under me, though, I will say, because I remember telling you, like, forever ago that I thought you should watch the series. And you were like, yeah, it's on my list. And you sneaky little guy, you went ahead and you just watched the whole damn show, and now I have to catch up. I'm like, damn.
Yeah.
But hey, it's good. It's good. I'll let it slide this time, I suppose. Is there any other like news stuff you want to talk about before we sort of jump in? Because I'm really excited to talk about what we do in the shadows. Like, I'm super excited about it.
I did want to thumb through a few to see if there were some details, little news bits, because I feel like there were a few that popped up. I don't think there was anything like, oh my God, like groundbreaking or anything like that. But I'm kind of thumbing through to see if I can find some little headlines I wanted to talk about. Now, this is kind of an obscure one, but I think it's gotten a little bit more mainstream, if you will. And I know people are going to be like, what are you talking about mainstream? Joe Bob is not mainstream, but in a sense, if you think about it, because we talk about him on the show a lot, anytime I feel like that his show spotlights a movie, it becomes better known to the horror public, because I see that all the time when they do a new movie on the show. You have so many mutants saying, my first time watching it. And this could now suddenly become their new favorite movie. I don't know. This is one of those that I remember they showed on the drive-in, I think 2 seasons back. It's called Butcher, Baker, Nightmare Maker. But I also think it goes under some other titles, or at least it at least has one other release title, but I can't remember what the name of it is. But this is the title that I know it's better known for, or at least to me. But it's getting a 4K release, or has gotten a 4K release. I believe it was from. Let me just open up the goddamn thing because I'm sitting here staring at it, and all the details are right there. Who released this? I think it was Vinegar Syndrome. Nope, Severin. Excuse me. They're another one of those that is popping up doing releases like this. So Severin Films has released a 4K version. Did the whole going back to the original negative. So if that's a movie on your list, definitely get it to your collection. I thought it was a very interesting movie. A little weird. When it comes to incestual relationships and things like that, it's just like,
yeah.
If you really want to be fucked up with something incestuous, go watch Old Boy. I'm not going to say any more than that. Anyway, so apparently, I don't know if he's going to be playing the character or not, but there's a dark reimagining, because this is the cool thing that we do now, dark reimaginings. Of Robin Hood, called The Death of Robin Hood, and it is being produced, or it's been picked up by A24, excuse me, and is starring Hugh Jackman and Jodie Comer. And Hugh Jackman's a selling point, I gotta admit. I won't say that I've seen every single one of his movies. I'm sure I've missed a few, but him playing Robin Hood, if he's playing Robin Hood, I'm down for that. Hell, even if he was like the sheriff, I'd be down for that. So I'm gonna keep my eyes on this. I'm kind of hoping we hear good things, because I didn't know anything about this, and suddenly it's been picked up. So it's already been made apparently. So definitely gonna keep my eyes open for that. Did you happen to watch the trailer for Beetlejuice, or Beetlejuice? Excuse me, the new trailer.
I wanted to talk about it actually. I've been seeing some people give it hate.
I did too, yeah.
And I'm gonna say this. After watching the trailer, I'm even more excited for this film than I was initially. Like, I don't know. It's hard to catch the magic from certain films, and I felt like Beetlejuice was going to be one of those films. But I'm a little more hopeful. I'm still on the fence, but I'm a little more hopeful after watching this newest trailer. I thought it was funny. I thought it had enough of the like Beetlejuice feel of the original. Something that I didn't notice when I first watched it, but that I got pointed out to me, I cannot think of her name. She's a very, very pretty actress. She has the stitches across her face.
Oh, Monica Bellucci. Yeah.
If you notice in one of the scenes where they show her with her hand on her face, she's missing her ring finger.
Oh.
And they're thinking, if you remember back in the first Beetlejuice film, when he's going to marry the girl, he says, he's like, the ring, and he pulls a finger out with a ring on it, and he pulls the ring off, and he goes, don't worry, baby, she meant nothing to me.
Oh, okay.
We're thinking she's the one that the finger belongs to.
All right.
So, that could be fun. I liked the effects. I know they said that they wanted to use as many practical effects as they could, and I know a lot of people are like, well, a lot of that looked CGI. Okay, well, I'm okay with practical effects and CGI being mixed. We've had this conversation before. I think the trailer looked really good. I am interested in the characters. I think the characters seem solid. And I loved the ending. You're just a figment of my imagination. Really? Is this a figment of your imagination? And he makes him faint. Like, that made me laugh my ass off. I don't know. I'm excited for it. I think the trailer did it some justice. I think it looks like it's going to be a pretty good film, and I think it's funny somebody made a point to say, so the daughter brought Beetlejuice back just because she was being kind of petty. Like, don't say Beetlejuice. Oh, yeah, really, Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I'm for it, I think. I think I'm for this film. I think it's going to be good. I want to know more about Willem Dafoe's character as well.
Yeah.
And even Danny DeVito apparently has a little cameo in the film. There's a little, if you blink, you miss it kind of part with it.
Yeah.
If they do this right, I think it's going to be successful.
I'm hopeful for it because the one thing that the trailer kind of gave me a little bit of comfort in is it seemed as though they weren't trying to retread old ground. Obviously, you have to do the whole Beetlejuice and whatnot, so there's going to be some familiarity to it. The joke at the end that you mentioned that made you laugh with where he's pretty much doing what he did to Gina Davis and Alec Baldwin.
Yeah.
I wasn't like, we're doing it again. There was a part of me that was like, all right, one or two of those, fine. But do not retread more jokes because we've done that already.
And see, that was the thing that I've seen a lot of people say. They're like, please don't just make it a new movie with all of the same old jokes.
Right.
Like, you can throw a couple of old jokes in there, maybe even poke fun at some things that happened in the first film, but let's not make it just all about that. And I think if they do that in the right way, I think it will be really successful.
Yeah.
And from what I had seen in the trailer, it felt like that.
Yeah, I agree.
It feels fresh, but they throw in those little things that make it feel nostalgic.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's the big thing. Even the scene where Beetlejuice and Lydia first see each other, like after he says the juice is loose, and he's like right beside her, and he's like, "I'm gonna make you so happy."
Yeah.
Like, to me, that feels like old Beetlejuice, but it's also new and refreshing. And I don't know about you, but there were some parts in the trailer that make me think maybe Beetlejuice and Lydia team up at one point for something.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure.
It's the scene where he lights his thumb, and it's like he's got I think they're like blowing a doorway into the world of the dead. Like, that's what I was thinking was happening. But him and her just standing there with each other, and they kind of like look over at each other.
Yeah.
And I always think it's funny too. The other thing in the trailer that made me laugh is there's a part where Beetlejuice is looking at Catherine O'Hara's character, and he's kind of eyeballing her up and down, and she just kind of looks at him like, ew. Like, I'm like, what is his obsession with all of the women in this family?
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, Winona Ryder, I can understand the obsession. Like, not gonna lie, she is a very pretty lady. But no, I'm with you there. I think if they don't just try to rehash a bunch of old jokes and they keep it original while giving us a little bit of tidbits from the past movies, I think we're going to be really good.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to balance it out really well with the horror and comedy. You know, Beetlejuice, to me, the original film, yes, there is a lot to it that as a kid might freak you out.
Sure, yeah.
But you're also laughing. And I always thought the first one was really good at it. And somebody made a good point. They were like, so the first film was called Beetlejuice. This film is called Beetlejuice. What if they decide to do a third one and call it Beetlejuice? The only way that I think that will work is, you know, if they do this film and it goes really well, and they can maybe make another story that would be interesting, possibly. But let's not run it into the ground. Like, we're good with 2 if that's where it's at.
Yeah.
If they leave it there, that's where it's at. I think everybody still looks really good. You know, Catherine O'Hara looks great. Winona Ryder looks great. And Michael Keaton, I mean, I don't know what that guy takes in the morning, but he still looks phenomenal. There's subtle parts where you can kind of see that he is a little bit... But in my mind, I always... If a character starts to look older or something, I always make excuses in my mind, and I always look at it like, well, everybody else grew a little bit, so maybe Beetlejuice grew to make him not feel so bad. Yeah. You know, like... I just do random things like that in my brain with characters. So, but yeah, I am super excited for it. So, sorry I'm rambling.
No, it's fine.
Yeah, I am super excited for it.
Here was an interesting tidbit that came out, and to be honest, I'm not upset about it, and I'll explain why. Okay. Apparently, it was announced this week that Adam Wingard would not be returning to direct a follow-up to Godzilla Kong, and I'm okay with that. Not that I don't like him as a director, but I think now it's time for somebody else to put their stamp on it. You know, allow somebody else to play with the toys, if you will, and see which direction they want to go with it. Do they want to go back to a more serious direction? Do they want to amp it up and stay in the playful Showa type, you know, where everything's just silly and crazy? I don't care. But I think it would be fun to have somebody with a different perspective, still a love for the characters and the monsters and everything, but maybe with a new vision, you know what I mean? Kind of shake it up a little bit. So I'm okay with that. Again, I feel like that would have been a safe bet to just have him come back, but this allows somebody else to do something with the Monsterverse. So I'm actually all right with it.
I actually saw something kind of interesting relating to Godzilla the other day. I think maybe we talked about it, but I've also seen it somewhere too. Somebody said they would love to see a more horror version of Godzilla, but based off of Godzilla from -1 when he's on the island before he gets nuked.
Okay.
So the much smaller Godzilla, and I could see something like that. You don't even have to call it Godzilla. You could come up with a name and like people would understand that that's what it's from.
Yeah.
But I would be cool with that. I don't know, and I do like the playful action movie style Godzilla. Like I think that is entertaining, but I would understand wanting to go back into a serious tone with it. But also with the way that the audiences are right now, I think you have to kind of gauge that a little bit too, because we went from a serious, Godzilla was very serious. What was that, 2014?
Yeah.
And then Godzilla King of Monsters, I think that was still pretty serious in tone. Kong, I felt, was serious in tone. And then we kind of started to get a little more action movie-esque. And then you have Kong using, what's the little gorilla's name?
Oh, Suko.
Kong using Suko as a weapon, which is apparently like his best weapon.
Yeah.
But, I think a lot of it just boils down to you have to see what your audience is doing. And, I understand you also just don't want to please the audience completely. Sometimes you have to do something that's not expected and then it turns out to be really good.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that you give anybody the reins and let them do whatever. We don't need to see Godzilla versus 80-foot Hitler. Like, we don't need to see that.
No.
Maybe we do. I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. I'm all right with it. Like I said, I'm kind of hoping that someone who wants the job, that I want more than anything. They want the job. Like, they have seen all the movies, whether it be on Godzilla's side or Kong's side. I would like somebody who leans a little bit more on Kong, but again, that's just my take, because he doesn't have the wealth of movies that Godzilla does. You know what I mean? I think that's why I didn't feel upset in any way that the last movie focused more on Kong than it did Godzilla, and Godzilla kind of showed up like an extended cameo, if you will. It didn't bother me, because I was like, well, you're telling a story focused on this character, so let's follow that character. Godzilla it was good to see him, but he had a movie not that long ago, a really good movie. And again, not saying this isn't a good movie, but he had his moment. This is Kong's moment.
Yeah.
Let him have a movie too, other than just the one that you've made thus far. So I really don't know where they want to go. I know that Kong, I did read that Kong is probably going to get a lot more focus in the Monarch series for the second season, which I'm all excited about, because we didn't get to see him at all up until the very ass end of the series, or the season 1. So I'd like to see a little bit more focus on that character. And I understand this is a budgeted television series, so we can't expect him to show up all the time. But we saw Godzilla a little bit more than I was expecting in that show too. So why not put your budget on Kong and, give him a moment to shine a little bit too. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, and also to the writer, whoever's going to be coming up with the next story, whatever that may be, try to make a villain that's actually threatening. Scar King had a lot of hype behind him as a threatening villain, and I don't feel like he stuck the landing on being all that badass.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah, I saw him kick some ass, but at the same time, I'm just like, okay, so he seems like he jumps around a little bit more than these other giant apes.
Yeah.
But that's about all he's got going for him. Like, I was expecting some just badass to come out, and I don't even want, like, I understand they keep making some of the Titans bigger and bigger, but let's be honest, Godzilla's gonna throw hands with anybody. I don't think he cares how big they are.
Yeah.
Like, he's gonna throw hands with someone.
I mean, literally, that would have been an interesting thing to do. I mean, I know Shimo was bigger than Godzilla, but not on such a massive scale. Like you said, he was like, I don't give a shit. Come on. But
Yeah.
why not come up with a threat that would make him pause?
Yeah.
Like, that would be something interesting.
I would like to see a Titan that's just maybe not even bigger than Godzilla, but a lot faster. Like, I would love to see a Titan that's just insanely fast.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, I don't know how well that would play out, but I think that would be interesting. And they would have to come up with a way to, Mothra would have to come save the day again. Let's be real.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know. This is why I don't write Godzilla movies. I don't know.
But yeah, anyway, we'll just keep an eye on that. Hopefully we'll get some news about whoever's going to take over the reins. I wouldn't mind Michael Dougherty coming back, because he did seem to have a deep love for the films. He did King of the Monsters, but at the same time, that's also the one out of the franchise that I feel like treaded familiar ground so close that I was like, He just needs to he needs to do something his own way. That's all I'm saying. I appreciate what he did. I really, really do. But like I said, a little too familiar for me, and that I was like, I've seen this movie. So anyway, the next thing I want to bring up is exactly what I was fearful of in a way with our topic last week. Okay, if everyone remembers, we talked about Jason Universe. Well, there was an announcement this week that I feel like is part of this push for whatever this Jason Universe is going to be. Jason Voorhees is dropping into multiverses, which if you're not familiar with what multiverses is, since, our audience, I'm sure we got some gamers out there, but for the uninitiated, this is a video game that is a brawler in the vein of Super Smash Brothers and a bunch of other knockoff type games where you have characters that like to beat the crap out of one another and you knock them off a platform. In multiverses, this is a swath of Warner Brothers owned IP. So we have Shaggy, Velma, Scooby-Doo, Adventure Time, Batman, Superman, what else? I know there's tons of Joker, you name it. Fucking Arya Stark from Game of Thrones. If that's just not like, what the shit? Okay, that's what I'm talking about. It's like they just thought it's Space Jam 2. That's what it is. You remember when they did the whole Space Jam 2 thing and they just crammed the guys from A Clockwork Orange standing on the sidelines of a basketball game. What the actual fuck was that? Just that's what this game is. This is Warner Brothers saying, let's get what was Algae Rhythm and think about all the awesome characters that would be great to fight one another.
Why?
Because we've always thought, what would it be like if Jason Voorhees went up against Bugs Bunny? Now we get to see it in action. You see my problem here? This literally was my fear with Jason Universe.
The only time that I've seen something like this be really successful was with the movie Ready Player One. But that was because it wasn't really the characters. It was pointed out that these were just video game versions of characters that existed. They weren't the actual characters. I saw the ad with Jason for this game, and it really it feels like they're trying to do a stretch. Like, yeah, we pulled Jason from Camp Crystal Lake and we dropped him here. And I know it's just a video game, but it's like when you start saying that you're pulling the character into these other forms of media, it really takes it away from me.
And furthermore, he is a character better suited for Mortal Kombat, where he's been before. That is a place for that character.
Yeah.
He doesn't...
Not a kid's game.
Yes, a kid's game. Like, it's meant for younger players because you have... I mean, take a look at Superman and Batman. They have a very animated design. And again, like I said, Bugs Bunny, Adventure Time, all these things... These other characters from kid shows. Well,
and even with Batman and them, like, there's the Injustice game.
Yeah.
And in that, it's a little bit more adult, I would say. But the thing is, Batman and Superman and all these characters, it's a little easier to change them into different versions. Versions for kids, versions for adults. Jason Voorhees has never... been a character that I'm like, oh, we could make a kid version of him. We could change this around. What are they going to do next? Are they going to do Muppet Babies but with slashers? Are we going to have slasher babies? Like,
do you want to hear the roster? Would you like to hear the full roster?
Please.
Because I wanted to make sure that I had all of these characters set up. So apparently, this is their official website, these are the characters available to play in the game. Okay, Marvin the Martian, Gizmo from Gremlins, Black Adam, Stripe from Gremlins, Rick and Morty, 2 separate characters, LeBron fucking James from Space Jam, obviously, the Iron Giant, Taz, Velma, Arya Stark, Batman, Bugs Bunny, Finn and Jake from Adventure Time, Garnet from Steven Universe, Harley Quinn, Rain Dog, who I don't know who the fuck that is. Okay, whatever. Whoever Rain Dog is, that's another playable character. Shaggy, Steven Universe, Superman, Tom and Jerry, and Wonder Woman, along with Jason coming.
How the fuck does he fit into that?
I don't know. But that's what, like I said, that's what I have been worried about.
What are we coming to? Like, I can just hear it now. Coming to Mario Kart Racing, Freddy Krueger. Like, what the fuck?
Just passes by.
I think I just had a.
Gives him that look.
I think I just had a mini stroke listening to that. Jeez Louise. Like, oh my.
But this is this is Warner Brothers though. This is Warner Brothers today. This is what they are doing, and yeah. So
you know, I don't know if you've seen the trailer for it. There is a video game coming out. The people that make those Funko Pop toys are doing a video game, and it's sort of the same thing. They're tossing a bunch of characters from all of the games, well, all of the Funko Pops. They're tossing them all into this game, and I guess Chucky's going to be in this game. So just another icon that's being tossed into something. Don't get me wrong, the game looks like it might be fun, but it's weird because you're playing as Funko Pop characters.
yeah.
But it's like you shoot them, their heads explode, there's blood. It's definitely interesting. If you get the chance to check it out, I won't go into details on it. You should see some of the characters they have in this game. Like, it's like a what the hell kind of thing with it. God.
Just saying. I'm just throwing it out there.
Jason Voorhees doesn't need to be fighting Bugs Bunny or Taz. You know, I agree with you. Like, Mortal Kombat, games like that, that is where those characters belong. And if some company wants to get together and make a video game that is strictly slashers fighting, I would be down for that.
Oh, yeah.
That would be cool. And there's plenty of slashers, and you could get really obscure slashers to put in. You could put certain creatures from certain monster movies, like Frankenstein versus Jason. Well, Frankenstein's monster versus Jason. I would love to see that play out.
yeah.
That would be cool. I would rather see that than Jason fighting Bugs Bunny. Hey, what's up, Doc?
Yeah.
Hacks his head off with the machete, and it's over. Like, come on.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on. What else do I want to... Okay, so this... It's never going to end. Public domain characters becoming horror films. I guess someone else decided, hey, you know what? I know they're doing a Winnie the Pooh horror film. We want to do that same thing too, but instead, we're not going to focus on Pooh. We're going to make a horror movie about Piglet. And that is literally a movie that's coming out, Piglet, the horror movie. Not related to the other one. Not related to it at all. Just somebody else, very much like the Steamboat Mickey thing. You got so many people just trying to jump on this bandwagon, and I don't understand. I don't understand it. I don't. I'm speechless because I don't get it. I don't get it. Like, why is this the thing we're doing now with public domain characters?
I have a question. We don't have to go into a lot of detail about this. Just a real quick, off the top of your head, kind of out there. If you had to make a Winnie the Pooh horror movie of some kind, what do you think you would do?
I would make it psychological. Okay. I would make it a psychological horror thriller that's all in the mind of Christopher Robin. Like, none of this shit is real. It's all imaginary, and maybe he is the killer, but it looks like it's Pooh and Piglet and all these other people, and it's in his head that he is imagining, oh my God, my friends are killing everybody. What is wrong with him? But it's him. He snapped because he's never been right in the head in the first place because he's been talking to his stuffed animals, playing in a fucking 100-acre wood. That would be my take.
I would make the father... I would do a real-life scenario where Christopher Robin's father wanted his son to have friends that would never leave him. And sort of in the same vein of Five Nights at Freddy's, Chucky, all that, he's sacrificing people to bring the stuffed animals to life.
Okay. Make it work too.
And Christopher Robin down the road wants to add to the collection.
Fair enough.
And maybe both of them get killed, and at the end we see Christopher Robin's body laying there. And for the whole movie, sort of psychological, like you're saying, you sort of don't know if it's really in his head or not that these stuffed animals are alive. But when he dies at the end, one of the toys crawls up to him or something.
Okay.
Come on, people. Let's stop doing slashers. If you're going to do it right.
Yeah. Your slashers are easy to just put together, but to make them good, you have to have a little substance to it, you know?
And you know what? I'm going to say this about slashers. I tweeted something the other day. Yes, I said tweeted because I'm not going to say I X'd something because that doesn't make any damn sense. I tweeted something the other day about how it's so unfortunate that kids aren't learning trades because trades are useful. And if you think about it, all the really good slashers have some kind of trade that they've learned. Whether that's, being a butcher, being an outdoorsman. I consider these things trades. Being a beekeeper, I was just thinking about that. Like, I would love to sit down and think of what would these slashers be doing if they never became slashers. They would probably have just 9-to-5 jobs. But I picture that and I laugh my ass off. But thinking about that too, slashers really are just, you love them, but it's such a simple formula. And people need to get away from it because you're turning everything into a slasher now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, are they going to make a Killer Pinocchio movie where it's just a guy with a mask, and when he hits a button, the nose is like a knife, and it grows, and he stabs people?
Jesus Christ.
I mean,
wouldn't be...
That was just off the top of my head. That's going to be a movie, I bet.
Yeah, no doubt. No, I feel like I heard someone talking about a slasher Pinocchio movie the other day, and I was like, sure. I know we've done this before, but still, sure, whatever.
Well, there's an old one that is... It talks... Like, it pokes fun at the whole... fairy tale. It's like Pinocchio was real. He wasn't a fairy tale. And it's like an evil little doll. And when he lies, his nose grows. But there's a scene in it where the girl's holding the door shut because there's no lock. And he's lying. And he's like, I'm not going to hurt you. I promise. And his nose is so sharp that it goes through the door and it goes through her hand. It's stupid. But hey, at least they did something other than a slasher. It was actually a possessed doll. It was just like the real Pinocchio, but evil. Like, that makes sense to me.
Okay.
Sorry, the Jason thing just has me on a tangent.
No.
As you were saying.
I understand what you mean. The last two things I have are announcements for upcoming projects. I guess I'm going to talk about this one first because I have a little bit more to say about the other one. Blumhouse, everybody's favorite production company. I don't have a problem with them. I'm pointing fingers. They are apparently eyeballing remaking My Bloody Valentine, which I thought we had done this not that long ago. I thought we did this about 10 years ago with
Jensen Ackles played the villain in it. Yeah.
So
I remember going to the theater and seeing that.
I thought it was all right. I didn't remember hating it or anything like that. So I don't know what their plans are. I just heard that they're looking to remake it. So keep our eyes on it. Maybe they'll do something fun with it, or it's just it's going to be hated. I can tell you that already.
Oh yeah, 100%. There is another movie. It's a horror movie, and it's just called Valentine.
I have heard of that. Yeah.
And the villain wears like all black, but they have this one. I think it's like a mask of like a woman's face or something. Mm-hmm. That movie got a lot of flack back in the day, and it's actually not too bad either.
I'm
just, yeah, I think if I went back and watched My Bloody Valentine, the remake that they did not too long ago, I think it would be fine.
Sure.
I really do. And then, there's some movies that they take the remake thing to a whole new extreme. There was the Town That Dreaded Sundown, mm-hmm. which is based off of like real killings that happened. But it's funny because when they did the remake, the killer that came back was killing people while they were watching the original movie.
Yeah. It was a bizarre remake.
And I actually, as weird as it sounds, I actually kind of enjoyed it. It was really bizarre. It was really weird, but I'm like, this is really different. I'm kind of digging what it's doing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's another one I wouldn't mind actually talking about, the original Town That Dreaded Sundown, because there's I don't want to talk about it right now, but yeah, we got to put that on our list of things to watch because, or to talk about. We probably watch it again. I probably need a refresher, but yeah, there's a lot that needs to be discussed about that. So anyway, last thing, and this is the one I had a little bit more to talk about. James Wan, who I like. I think he does some good stuff.
Yeah.
He's looking to produce a reboot of The Munsters, but a dark version of The Munsters.
I heard that.
1313, which I feel like they were trying to do that once before. Like there was supposed to be a TV reboot maybe called 1313 Mockingbird Lane.
There was a show that did a few episodes. I think Eddie Izzard is in it.
Okay, so they probably did do it. Yeah, okay.
That was a they wanted to get away from calling it the Munsters, so they had a different name for it. I don't know if that's the same show that I'm thinking of, but yeah.
I think it is.
They tried and they failed.
Yeah. I guess where my concerns are this. First of all, you're talking about doing a quote-unquote dark reboot. That's already problem number one, because the Munsters were never dark. They were slapsticky, and silly. It's like the concept alone of monsters living next door and people and they're living their lives. That's the joke. And
yeah,
I don't know what their plans are to do a dark version of that and it just make it work. I can't wrap my head around that.
Yeah, and in all honesty, if you're gonna reboot the Munsters, I think you still need to just make it like a family sitcom. Like that's what it needs to be. I remember reading about this just the other day. I completely forgot that I had even read it because I guess it was just one of those things that I was like, eh. But I remember reading it and going, who asked for this?
Yeah, yeah.
It's like everything that they remake, they think they need to make darker for some reason. I can't bring myself to see the Munsters like that. I would love to see a show from a different perspective. Here's an idea. I would love to see the show about the guy who lives in between the Munsters and the Addams family. I want to see about that guy.
Yeah.
Having both those people as neighbors and just living with them as neighbors. I would pay money to see that show because that would be hilarious.
Sure. And look, I'm not going to say that there is no way to make this happen. I mean, if you do if you're saying dark, but again, I still feel like this is what they were trying to do with that Mockingbird Lane series that you mentioned, because yeah, I looked it up and I remember hearing about that, but I guess it never got through. According to this, it never got past a pilot. So they made a pilot for it, but that's as far as it got.
Yeah.
And dark humor, yeah, I'm all for it. But I also feel like, again, that negates the Munsters. The Addams family is dark humor, 100%.
Yeah.
Like they have, that was their whole brand. It's just some of the wickedly dark, morbid comedy that they could flesh out of that. But the Munsters, again, never really had that edge to it. And I'm not saying you couldn't do that, but then all you're doing at that point is just doing the Addams family. So
yeah, you know what they could do, sort of in relation to what we're talking about today. They could treat it kind of how they treated the filming of What We Do in the Shadows.
Oh yeah,
I think that would be an interesting concept because you could still have some of the slapstick, still have some of the dark moments, and it would still feel like the Munsters, but it would be kind of new. I mean, it would be funny if like struggling with names today. The dad from the Munsters, Frankenstein's monster himself.
Herman. Jesus.
Yeah, Herman. I'm struggling with names today. It'd be funny if their version of Herman, like, let's say he like destroyed his arm or something by accident, and then the crew's like, "What are we doing?" And he's like in a graveyard. And he's like, "Oh, just hand shopping." Like, that would be dark, but it would be hilarious. Yeah. And he's trying to dig with one hand to find a body, and he can't find the right size arm that he needs or something. Like, that would be funny. I mean, I could see that, but let's not go like. I feel like a lot of the times they want to go too dark.
Yeah.
And that's where it's a struggle for me because I love the Munsters.
Mm-hmm.
Always did. And to see them turn just like real dark.
Yeah. Because
that's not a selling point for me.
Like, I'll give credit to Rob Zombie for his movie. I understand it was not a super great movie, but I still felt like he understood the characters themselves and what they needed to be. It's just his story didn't work, But he got the characters right. I felt like he at least got the right actors, save for his wife. But again, I think she did fine. But I mean, the actors that he got to play the characters, they played them as they were seen on the show. They had that edge to them. They had that silliness to them. So I felt like he got that. How do you? I don't know. I guess I'm having trouble reckoning how you try and interpret that properly without losing who they are. And I feel like a lot of these reboots that they've done over time have done that. Like they either didn't understand the material the way that it was originally perceived, or they took the wrong ideas from it and said, well, let's just make it zanier and wackier. And it's just like, now this is just, it's grating to the ears, you know?
Now here's a concept. So do it like what we do in the Shadows. Make the Munsters, the immediate family, be, more like the classic Munsters that we love. But what if they have family that's coming to stay with them? And that family's still real old school and still real monstrous.
Yeah.
So that family wants them to be more monstrous, but they're trying to teach that part of the family to be a little bit more relaxed. Like, that would be funny.
Yeah.
You could get some darkness in there. I mean, I don't know. Again, when I read it, I was like, who asked for this? But I won't knock it till I try it. I'll give it a chance. I'll see how it goes. And if it's good, it's good. If it's not, well, I don't have to watch it.
Yeah, exactly. So
I
I want it to be good because I feel like that the Munsters have not really had an opportunity to really shine outside of the original series, which is really weird considering the Addams had 2 solid movies, live action. The animated ones were fine for what they are. Wednesday is kind of a nice, reintroduction to the characters, like a different time period for the characters, which I kind of appreciate. I won't say that it's my favorite Addams interpretation, but I can appreciate some of the things they're trying to do. Try to step up in the story and watch Wednesday grow up. I appreciate that. So I don't know. I feel like the Munsters are due for a proper reboot of sorts. I don't know if this will be it. Fingers crossed that we'll actually get something that's entertaining like the original show, or even better. Who knows? I'm not gonna put a lot of faith in that one, but I'm just saying. But that's all the news I got. So let's talk about what we do in the shadows.
Before we get started, I have to ask you.
Okay.
Are there any sayings from the show, any quotes that you absolutely love? I had to look up the quote because I couldn't remember it exactly, but I have a favorite quote from the show.
I'm going to say no because I can't think of any quotes off the top of my head, so they didn't stick with me, but I guarantee you I'm going to know exactly what you're talking about when you say it.
I'll let you take a guess. What quote do you think is my favorite?
I'm drawing a blank. I'm trying to remember. I feel like I will know it the moment you say it, and I'm going to kick myself in the ass for not remembering.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
You really are the most devious bastard in New York City. I
can hear it now.
I love that line. I don't know why, but I freaking love that line. And I don't know where you want to start, but I just want to say one thing. I didn't realize how much I appreciate, Matt Berry.
Matt Berry, yep.
Matt Berry is hilarious. And I love Laszlo in the show. I love him. He's probably my favorite character. Nandor is right up there, but Laszlo's just, I don't know. He's my favorite. He's one of my favorite characters, and even when he talks about why he became a vampire, he basically says so he can fuck forever. He's every frat boy that you hate but you find funny. Like that's how I picture him.
Yeah.
Oh man, but I just wanted to point that out real quick. But I know you had some things that you wanted to talk about with it, so I'll let you kind of say what you want, and I'll just kind of ramble like I normally do.
So where I kind of wanted to start, and I'm sure with this it could be a two-way street for some people. Some people might be familiar with the show on FX and have never seen the movie, or vice versa. I originally saw the movie, and then when the show came around, I was a little hesitant because I was like, what? You're doing a show? And that's... You have to look at it from a certain perspective. Growing up, when a movie became a TV show, if you didn't grow up in the 80s, boy, you missed some shit. And they did it in the 90s too. But it would always be like, hey, this movie was a smash hit. Let's turn it into a sitcom. Who asked for an Uncle Buck sitcom? You'd think it would work, but it doesn't. Same with Adventures in Babysitting. What the actual fuck? Those are just two that came to mind, but there were so many more. They tried to capitalize on the popularity of something. So, again, when I see this thing, when a movie becomes a TV series, I get a little apprehensive. I'm like, ah. Now, to be fair, the series on FX was created and still helmed by Jermaine Clement and Taika Waititi, which that kind of eased some of my concerns, because it was like, okay, well, they're involved. And Jermaine is like heavily involved, more than I realized. It wasn't just like they were executive producers. Like, he directed and wrote many of the episodes. So that, again, helped me feel a lot more content with it. But I'd been wanting to kind of go back and watch the original movie because it had been a while. And I happened to notice that it was on sale on Fandango at home. It's Voodoo. Sons of bitches gotta give me a damn mouthful of shit to say it. But I wanted to go back and watch that, and I felt like after watching it and having the series kind of fresh in my mind, I saw similarities. I saw, various ways that they kind of approach some of the details. So I thought it would be fun to talk about all of it. So I can talk a little bit more on the movie side, and then your expertise will be a little bit more on the TV side, so we can kind of smash a lot of this conversation together, because I feel like you can see some of the inspiration. At least I didn't realize it at the time. Like, there were elements in the show that I would see and I'd be like, that seems familiar to the movie, but I wasn't 100% sure.
Yeah.
And then now, having gone back and watched the movie, I see it now. I was like, oh, so that's like in the show where they kind of went down that road, and they just expanded the ideas.
Yeah, that was the thing that I really thought. So to me, it was sort of in the same vein as like what Ash vs. Evil Dead, what that did for the Evil Dead film series. It just expanded upon that universe, and I feel like what we do in the Shadows just sort of expanded upon the whole universe that is discussed in the film and everything else. There's a lot more vampires out there, and I'm surprised. Like, I could have honestly, I know the show is coming to an end. I don't know if it's come to an end yet. I think it is getting ready to come to an end.
This next season that's going to be coming out, that'll be it.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if in a year or two we hear that they're talking about doing some kind of like spin-off series or something.
Sure.
Because it's a big universe. They meet a lot of vampires. They even meet other monsters. I think they meet if I remember right, there's a troll in one episode, and he's arguing with the energy vampire. I can't think of his
Colin.
name.
Oh, hey guys,
yeah,
how you doing? He's just in here talking. So what's going on? You guys all right?
The sad thing is I know people like that.
Yeah.
Like,
oh my God, yeah.
I know people that are really like that. But he's arguing with the troll, and the troll's out until the sun comes up and he turns to stone.
It's like, oh.
The werewolves. I'm sorry, but when Nandor's fighting the werewolf, and he's like, he's rather big. He's very big. And, he's going to pick a weapon, and he grabs the chew toy and he tosses it off the roof and jumps off the roof. There's all kinds of things in the show that just, you think it's not going to work, but it works with how they're doing it. It's like a camera crew's just following a bunch of vampires. And it sounds like the dumbest concept you'd ever hear, but vampires are just really shitty people. Yeah. Like, that's really, at the end of the day, they're just kind of crummy people. And I love in the series. I think it was between the first and the second season. There's a bunch of changes that happen. Everything is changing rapidly, and Colin dies and he comes back as a kid, and by the time Colin gets all of his memories back and everything's just right as it was before. Yeah. And Guillermo, he calls that out. He's like, things never change here ever. And it's the truth. Nothing ever changes. Not to mention, I want to just, I know I'm kind of jumping here, but all of the guest stars they've had on the show.
Sure, yeah.
They've had a lot of like really big guest stars. I loved seeing Mark Hamill. I'm just going to say that. I loved seeing him, and the fact that they paid him off with Billy the Bat.
I thought that was the greatest thing ever.
Yeah, he's so happy about it. And then they're like, I think it break at the end, and he's upset, and they're like, you can get those anywhere, and he's like, what?
Yeah, and they pointed one that was sitting on like a bar wall or something like that. Oh, son!
And he's like, I'll get revenge, Laszlo.
Yeah, even
like, who knew you?
What was the
go ahead?
The council scene. That was where we had a lot, and
yeah, there were.
That was actually where, and I didn't know this. I know you had kind of mentioned it previously, and it brought me so much joy. It showed that, yes, this is like the movie and the show are connected.
Yeah.
Because we saw Taika and Jermaine as their characters, who are like Vladislav and well, what's his fucking name? Viago.
Yeah.
So they were there in the council, and I was like, "Holy shit, that's awesome!" And then around it,
I also
wasn't it?
I also love it. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say the rest of the people, they were people who had played vampires in other movies.
Yeah.
So you had like Donald Logue, Wesley Snipes.
Yeah, he was on the. That's
The
what I was
Zoom
going to
call.
say. Because they're bragging about him being the Daywalker, and he's on the like Zoom call, and it's messing up. I can't remember all the guest stars that they had.
I know that one
that
was
episode,
the biggest one because there were just so many.
And I can't think of the woman's name that was on her too. So she's been in so many.
I know who you're talking about too. I'm gonna try to look it up.
Yeah, I know you don't like the Constantine movie, but I know she's in the Constantine movie. She's one of the like angels in the Constantine movie. She was in the like Chronicles of Narnia. She was the witch. Been in so many things.
Christ.
Like I saw her pop up on there, and I was like, "What is she doing here?"
I know who you're talking about. Damn it. I can't remember shit.
Was Leguizamo in an episode? I feel like he was in an episode. Maybe not. I don't remember.
It does sound right. All right, so I got the list. Hang on. Oh, it was Tilda Swinton. Shit.
Thank you.
I
There
knew who you were talking about, and for the life of me.
is this a pretty long list of guest stars?
Well, this would be just in the council episode. So this is just a start. Okay, so in that one we had, obviously, like I said, Taika, Jermaine, Tilda Swinton, Evan Rachel Wood, Danny Trejo, Paul Rubens.
Danny Trejo, I forgot about.
Even Johnny Brugg,
yeah.
I didn't even know this. Johnny Brugg, he played Deacon in the movie. He was their other flatmate.
Okay.
So he was there. Dave Bautista.
Okay.
I think that might be it for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was a whole slew of different people in that episode.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I love that they were able to get all of these different guest stars, and I love how they like seem to poke fun at the whole vampire, other vampire media. It's like, oh, he's a daywalker.
Yeah.
I think that's, I don't know, I think that's phenomenal. And another thing that I think that's great, so Doug Bradley is in the show.
Mhm.
He is one of the elder vampires. I can't think of.
He was like the bear. Was it just the Baron?
The Baron.
Yeah.
The Baron. That's right. Doug Bradley's one of the most famous people you've ever seen who you've not really seen.
Yeah.
Because he's always in makeup. But I love that they give him justice in this, and he gets reverted back to his form before he became the like more monstrous Baron.
Yeah.
So you get to see him in it, and that's probably one of my favorite episodes. When Nandor's got the genie and he's got all the wishes and he's going through all of his old wives, and then he wants a bigger penis and he's trying to make all these rules, and the genie's like telling him at every turn, like, "Oh, you caught that trick, huh?" He's like, "Yeah, I don't want my penis to stay the same size and everyone else's penises to get smaller. That's not right." And at the end, the trick is that every time he has sex, he thinks of Guillermo.
Yeah.
It's like, okay,
Just can't win.
and then I think the genie gives him another lamp
Yeah.
at the as a wedding present. He gives him another lamp. Oh man. Anyways, as you were saying, because I'll ramble about random things with the show.
Well, I want to go back to the movie for a second because it really laid the
Yeah, go ahead.
groundwork for how this worked, because I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it. Now, I'd say about the time that this came out, I was familiar with Jermaine because I was a huge fan of Flight of the Conchords. I got into them kind of in the early 2000s, I guess, when they were really kind of blowing up. They had that show on HBO, and I was really into their music, really into their show. Taika, I wasn't familiar with at the time. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, even though he had worked with them on Flight of the Conchords, I guess I didn't associate him with them yet. So clearly, a lot of these people who were in this production, they had worked together previously. They had done all these projects together. So saw a lot of familiar faces and just didn't realize it. But this is where I really fell in love with Taika, because his character Viago, the term dandy, they had called him that in the movie, and I was like, that's perfect, because he's just so, everything's got to be a certain way, and that's that. And just like the opening bit says everything you need to know about the movie going forward, was we have to have the house meeting, and we've got to talk about, you haven't done the dishes for 5 years, Deacon. It's your job. It's your job, and you haven't touched them. He's like, why should I? I'm a vampire. Why should I be doing dishes? I'm a vampire. This is insulting. And just go through this whole thing. They have that little face-off, just hissing at each other in the air, and then sit back down. And the next thing you know, he's over there washing dishes going, bullshit. And that says everything going forward. Just how mundane some of the shit can be, but the hilarity that comes out of it. Like, and I loved it so much. So as the movie just progresses and just some of the ridiculous shit that they do and that they say, it makes it so much better. So when the show did it, I appreciated that they weren't trying to make carbon copies. You know what I mean? Because I think that was another concern that I had. Is like, so are these trying to be those same characters, or are they going to give them their own personalities? Now, to some degree, there are hints of similarities. Yeah. But they're not a one-to-one comparison. Like, I wouldn't consider Nandor to be a dandy. But he does kind of have some of those quirks where he's, everything's got to be certain particular, it's got to be a certain way. I don't want to have it, messing up everything in the house. It's very particular about how we do things. So
your Nandor is pretty spot on.
I did like to try and pick it up when I was listening to it. It's very, I love it. It's so particular. So any chance I get to do these voices, man, I love doing it. So he has those hints, like I said, of Iago, but he's not quite that. So I appreciated that, where you can have someone who's kind of like it, but not that. Because again, Iago, he's a little bit more particular about everything, and everything's got to be a certain way. And then you go to Vladislav and we just said his name, Laszlo. There are similarities there. Somebody who kind of is a warmonger of his time and whatnot and did some terrible things. Like Laszlo kind of had that similar story beats. But again, I wouldn't compare them identical because, like you said, Laszlo's like a pussy hound, if you will. And I wouldn't say that Laszlo is not, but I never got that sense out of him throughout the entire movie. Yeah. It was just like he did lust. He did have his things. I think there was a line. I know this is a little on topic, but off topic, but they were talking about virgin blood, something like that. Yeah. Someone was like, we like to drink the virgin blood because it sounds cool. And he's like, think of it like this. If you're going to eat a sandwich, you would just to enjoy it more if you knew no one had fucked it. And I was like, yeah, okay, sure. So I could hear Laszlo saying something like that. In fact, here, I'm going to try, because I have been trying to do Matt Berry, trying to tap into his voice, because it's very commanding, it's very simple, so think of it like this. If you're going to eat a sandwich, you would just enjoy it more if you knew no one had fucked it. That's all I'm going to say. And then, of course, you have his relationship with Nadja, which, again, creates like a new dynamic in the house. So I appreciated that, too. Yeah. So she doesn't really feel like a carbon copy of anybody, not just her own person. And I think she's just as equally amusing, just her...
Oh, 100%.
Her... I guess you could say she has anger issues. She's a little wound up about shit. Yeah. So she gets...
She's always wanting to kill someone.
Yeah, always. And then, obviously, we have to talk about Guillermo. Because what they did in the movie is they did the Guillermo thing, but not in the same way. You know what I mean? Like we saw that, I think it was, whose familiar was it? I think it was Viago's. No, it was, Christ. I'm going to get their names here in a second, damn it. Deacon.
We're professionals.
Yeah, it was Deacon's familiar. And of course, she would talk to the cameras and she'd be like, yeah, I've been doing this for, however many years. I'm trying to, I'm going to become a vampire one day. She even has the talk with him. She was like, I feel like we need to have this talk. I've been doing this. You said you were going to change me. You haven't done it. And then he just brushes her off very much in the same way that Nandor does. It was just like, okay, we talk about this later. I don't have time to talk about it now. And then just walks away. So Guillermo obviously they had to expand on him. They had to flesh him out more. I love what they did with Guillermo because it was not how I expected it to go, with him being a vampire hunter for starters, like it being, what was it, his Van Helsing blood, or like he was a descendant of Van Helsing, so it was just like he instantly could just kill vampires without thinking. It just like automatic reactions. And I thought that was a very interesting dichotomy that got brought in, because he's trying to protect them, he's still trying to be a good familiar, but he's doing it in the wrong ways that's going to get him in a lot more trouble with the vampires and the Vampire Council, because again, you can't kill vampires, or vampires cannot kill vampires. That's the rule. And then of course that just him doing what he's done creates problems for them later on.
Yeah.
And it was really, really smart. Like they could have easily just toss this aside and just be like, he's just some guy who's always being put down, which you got to feel sorry for the dude.
Oh, 100%.
Like, they treat him like such garbage. And
like, I was so happy when he started becoming more and more in tune with his abilities to kill vampires, because I'm like, okay, so he is a badass, because he was just getting pushed around and everything. I'm like, come on, man, like, do something. And it's funny because the actor that plays Guillermo, my son was watching some Nickelodeon, live show, some sitcom thing, and Guillermo was on there, and he was like the really annoying cousin. And I'm like, man, I'm glad he got the role that he got, because whew. And I like him as Guillermo. I really I love him as the character. And I love when he first kills vampires, he's got like this shock to him. And it's very much like watching a teenage girl driving on her own for the first time. Yeah. Just the shock and the despair that he's feeling while he's doing everything. And then he kind of just gets into his own groove, and he just becomes this badass character. I'm glad that they did what they did with his character, because like you said, they could have just kept him as the guy that was getting pushed around and everything else, but adding that layer of depth to him, and even having, because there's a scene where they go to the market and there's vampires and familiars fighting. No, there's familiars fighting each other, sorry. And they send Guillermo out there, and Guillermo's cleaning house, and then I think him and Nandor fight each other, and he actually he almost beats Nandor, but they like stage it to where Nandor comes out the winner. Mm-hmm. And then I think they tell him to kill his familiar, and he's like, I will do it. And Guillermo's like, what?
I remember that episode. Yeah, that was a good.
Yeah, I don't know. The show's just got, and like I said, I've not watched the movie in a long time, I'll be honest, but I do remember like pieces, and I know that the show really does follow a lot of that. Yeah. To a degree. And like you said, and something that I'll agree with completely, I love how extreme they go over the smallest little things. I think there's even some scenes where Nadia and Lord, me and names today, Laszlo, they get into like a little bit of a argument. I think they're hissing at each other, and I think there's a few scenes where like people float and they hiss at each other and everything, and it's over the dumbest stuff. And it's like they still know what it's like to be human, but they don't have the emotions quite right for the situations that they're put in. And I think that's what makes it like super funny. Yeah. Especially with the Baron too. I love when they go out. The one episode where the Baron wants to go out for a night on the town. Yeah. And it's before he looks normal, so they put him in this like stupid looking hat and this stupid outfit, and they're like, there's no way this is going to work, and like people are just ignoring it. And the Baron's like, I want to try human food. And he takes a bite of the pizza, and he just, projectile exorcist like vomiting, and you're like, it's over the top, but it's hilarious. And then I think they find some people and they suck their blood, but the people had drugs in their system, so they all get high.
I remember that, yeah.
And Nandor has the traffic cone on his head, and I think he says something like, I am a traffic wizard. And he's goofing off. Like it really is. They're like a bunch of frat guys just out hanging out. Yeah. But they're these immortal killing machines.
Well, I mean, just to kind of bounce off of that, back to the movie, some things that they did in that. So I'm going to go back to the one scene that they had kind of doing what they did with the Baron. So I can't remember what they had already done at that moment. Oh, I remember. So I think in this point in the movie, Nick, who was a friend of, I think it was Deacon's familiar, he had come there, and then suddenly he had turned. It was pretty much like a trap set that he was going to be killed and fed to them. So they chased him through, and then Peter, the decrepit vampire, attacked him, and they're like, "Ah, Peter got him." And then next thing you know, 2 weeks later, Nick shows back up and he's a vampire. And they're like, oh shit. So he's going around to, I'm Twilight. Yeah, look at me. I'm a vampire. Telling everybody in the town that he's a vampire. And they're just like, don't fucking tell everybody you're a vampire. He's like, but you got a documentary crew following you around. Everybody's going to know. He's like, don't matter. So they chastised him. Something had happened. They were at a restaurant just kind of relaxing for a second, and they had a buddy, like Nick had a buddy named Stu who was a human and was cool with everything, and he's sitting there eating chips, and he reaches over and eats a chip and said, don't do that. He's like, what? And he ate it. Next thing you know, cut to a scene, he's vomiting blood all over the street in the back alley. And you're like, you good? You all right? And then he turns back to the camera, Viago does, and goes, he ate a chip. And then Nick's walking down the street, he's like, don't believe it. Don't believe the hype. I'm over this vampire shit. Chips are my favorite food, and I can't even eat it anymore. I'm over it. It's just, I'm done. It's like, well, it's too late now, man. Like, no turning back. But, yeah, there was that scene, and then the frat boy stuff. 100% had to be the scene where they ran into the werewolves. This is frat boy shit all day long, and I was so happy with this scene because we got Reese Darby coming back, joining the crew, and I love Reese Darby in just about anything. Like, I don't know what it is about him. I guess it's that purity, that, he's just so nice. He's so good,
Right.
and I love it. I want to be around him all the time. He's just so fun. So he's there with the werewolves, and then just like, oh, what's that? You smell that? You smell some dog or whatever. And they're just throwing out just the most random insults, but it works because it's like calling them dogs and trash and all this stuff. And then of course, Reese is being the cool guy. It's like, hey, don't fall into this. Don't fall into the trap. And then the guy's like, what are you going to say there, asshole? He's like, what are we? We're not swearwolves. We're werewolves. Don't. And that just becomes a thing. I don't know. I love that whole interaction with the werewolves because, again, it does seem like frat boys. Whoa. And then, but it's over the dumbest shit just because one's a vampire, one's not. I don't know.
Real quick. I feel like that would be something great to say to your kids. Don't be a swearwolf.
Be a werewolf.
That's fantastic. I love that.
Yeah. We're not swearwolves.
So you got the movie at Voodoo. I'm just gonna call it Voodoo.
$5, man. I mean, you couldn't beat that.
That's not bad at all.
No.
I'm gonna have to see if it's on sale because I need to watch it.
Yeah, you really need. If you haven't watched that movie in a while, definitely go back and watch it. It's probably not even 90 minutes from what I remember. I mean, it's a quick watch, but by God, it's hilarious all the way through. And I mean, going back to the series, I guess I do want to touch, because I know I've been talking more about the movie, but about the series.
Oh, no, you're fine.
A lot of what they did in there, like I said, I mean, just having watched the movie again, I can see where they got some of their inspirations for some of the storylines, which I appreciate. It's not that they did an identical story beat to that, Like, for example, I think it was at the end of the movie, Viago, you heard him talk about some woman that he was enamored with back in World War II. I guess he was with the Nazis during that time, because he even talks about like one of his old familiars was a Nazi or something like that. And then you hear him talk about this woman that he was in love with back then. And then, of course, he never told her how he felt. And then next thing you know, he finds her, tracks her down, and she's married. And he was like, oh, I couldn't do anything. I just left her alone. But then at the end, he finally found her again, and she's like 96 years old. But he's like, no, we're going to do it. I loved her. I loved her then. I love her now. People can say what they want. People can say I'm snatching or robbing the cradle. It's like, I don't care. What does it matter? It's just like, all right. And again, they did that. I think it was with Nandor. He had like an old flame.
He's like, great. He's like, well, I know that there was one scene where he wanted to find if he had any ancestors that were alive
Yeah.
from when he was human, and they thought the witches were stealing his blood.
Yeah.
I remember Laszlo and Naj just saying, "Don't give them your blood. They're going to steal it. The witches will steal it." And Guillermo's just like, "No, we're doing an ancestry test." And he finds like one of his great, like a dozen of greats behind that granddaughter, I think it is.
Yeah.
And he floats. He's like, "I'm going to float up to her window." And he grabs a teddy bear. He's like, "It's me, your grandpa." And she comes to the window and he's like, "She fell over." And then they're wheeling her out and they cover her. And he's like, "It didn't go as planned." But it was like his great, so many times granddaughter. But I remember loosely from the movie what you're talking about too, though.
But again, what they did there, I appreciated that because they didn't do that same thing. It's like, okay, well, what would that entail? Because he actually did. I think it was her. Like he found her and she was youthful, or he made her youthful again, or something like that, and he got married to her. And then next thing you know, it was just like, I didn't want to do this. It's not the same. It's just like everything he ever wanted. And now it's just like, just.
And, I think that's the thing that's cool. The movie created this universe, and I feel like they're just building upon the universe that they built in the movie. They've brought that over into, the series. And it's almost like all of the vampires, because they've all been alive for so long and they've all just hung out with each other, They're so alike. So there is a lot of similarity there. But when you start learning about them, you've got a few different kinds of vampires. You've got the real serious ones that are real old school. You've got the more like modern ones that want to get with the times and this, that, and the other. And then you've got the ones like the ones that we're following who just, I feel like they don't know what the hell's going on half the time. We have to talk about one thing.
Okay.
And it has to do with the quote that I love from the show. That damn witch's hat.
Oh, God, yes.
That is cursed.
That fucking ugly ass hat.
Yes. That has a nipple on it.
Yeah, has a nipple.
I cannot think of the guy's name that plays. He's basically Laszlo's rival.
Oh, Nick Kroll.
Yes. A lot of people know who Nick Kroll is. If you've ever seen the show Big Mouth on Netflix, he does a ton of voices in there. He does a ton of voices in all kinds of things.
Would you like to hear
Go
one?
Ahead. Well, of course, if you're going to do voices, by all means.
Okay, so I probably shouldn't do this because one day it's gonna backfire on me. But yeah, Nick Kroll does a lot of voices. He does Little Nicky, who I can't do because that's his voice. I mean, I can probably do something like that, but it's not the same. John Mulaney, he does the other one, Andrew. That's easier. I can do that, because it's a little bit more cartoony. But then with him, he does, the hormone monster. He does, oh yeah, let's hit that baby. And then that other one, the other one, I can't remember his name, but he's talking like that. He's gonna pound that picture in there and you see the poof and go wild. That's awesome, baby. But the one that's gonna backfire on me one of these days is Lola, because I love, just when I'm in a spicy little mood, I'll come up to my wife and go, "Oh my God, what are you doing? That's just so terrible." And she's like, "Please, for the love of God, stop doing that." It's like, but come on, I just don't understand. She hates it. She loathes it. She detests it. And should I ever decide that I want to get lucky ever again, if I ever wanted to shut that down, that's all I have to do. I just go, "Oh my God," and that's the end of it. I've lost my chance.
If you really want to shut it down during the event, right as you're done, just saying "Oh God" is Lola.
That would be, "Oh my God, that felt so good." I would never have sex again. That would be the end of it.
I can just picture her face too.
She would be like, "Get the fuck off me now." Like, she literally hates that voice.
If I did that, I could hear my wife just going, "Remove yourself and leave."
Yeah, now. So, yeah.
Real quick.
Sorry.
Nick Kroll was on. No, that was phenomenal. Nick Kroll was on Jimmy Fallon's show, and they were doing voices, and he's like, "Can you do do like the hormone monster, and the only thing he said was, "Touch yourself, Jimmy." In front of the whole crowd.
Gotta say, baby, touch yourself. All right.
Oh man.
Anyway, yeah, Nick Kroll.
I need just 1 second here. Woo! Yes, Nick Kroll is a vampire that owns a nightclub.
Mm-hmm.
And this is probably one of my favorite episodes. They go and they're like, oh, we're, they think it's this big event and they dress in all these like old style clothes and everything. And it's modern times. And no offense to Nick Kroll's vampire, but there's no other way to put it. He's a fuckboy.
Yeah.
He really is. And he's got the one little rapping vampire that hangs out with him and this whole posse of vampires. Yeah. And it's all just a trap so they can get this witch's hat from Laszlo.
Which he needs to dispose of.
Yeah, Nadja tells him all the time, the bloody thing is cursed. And he's like, no, it's not. She's like, it's bad. He's like, no, it's not. And she's always saying things about it. And he's like, you're just jealous that it's good looking. Like he loves this hat. And it's an ugly ass hat. It really is.
Ugly.
But he loves the thing. And it's cursed. And the minute that Nick Kroll's character gets it, his nightclub catches on fire. But we're not done with him. They meet him again and they let him live in the basement with his woman, who is the worst looking vampire I think I've ever seen in my life. But she figures out that Guillermo is a Van Helsing, that he's a vampire hunter. Mm-hmm. And he accidentally kills her with a broom handle.
Yep.
And she turns to dust and falls on the floor. And Nandor tells him to clean it up.
Just clean this up. This is terrible. Leaving messes all over the house.
And it's all just a ploy. I mean, he goes so far as to create a fake home redesign show.
Yeah.
Just to steal this fucking hat. I'm sorry, but sometimes the simplest things make the best stories. Every episode that has been about that damn hat has been my favorite because they go so crazy over the hat. And it's just, I'm sorry, every time I think about it, I laugh my ass off because what other show would be able to do something like that and make it work? Something so over the top, over something so stupid.
Yeah.
And make it work. Going that crazy over a cursed hat that's made out of skin. It's just...
I mean, that's a testament to the writers. I mean, they really understood the material. Like I said, I'm so glad that Jermaine was still part of this because at least you had somebody who was responsible for the original and knew what the material needed to be. So the jokes have to land the same way. Like if this, well, it's kind of what I was saying where you remade television shows or you made television shows from movies. You completely missed the mark. The moment you turn something like Uncle Buck into a sitcom, it's not the same. The feeling is gone. These two things feel identical. Like the lifeblood between them is shared. And again, it's also an extension of the movie, just with a different set of vampires, different setting. So you're never missing the mark. It's just more of that thing with new characters, but you're playing with new things, and that's what's so on point about it. It's like it is an extension of that movie, and that's what makes it work.
Well, and it almost makes me wonder if, like, when they were writing everything, if they wanted to do a series originally, like if they thought this would be a great series, but maybe they couldn't get the funding at the time or something, so they're like, well, how about we do a movie?
Sure.
And we see if people will bite at it, because if people like it as a movie, we have this idea for a series too.
I mean,
it could have been something like that.
I don't think you might. I think maybe you might be onto something there, because I have heard, like I read some trivia, that they filmed, I think they said 125 hours worth of footage. And we're talking like improv bits and just things like that. Like they had a shooting script of things that they wanted to do, but then, like I said, 125 hours of just them bullshitting, making jokes, cracking wise, whatever. And then they had to cut that down to 90 minutes. I mean, the editing job alone in that, goddamn, So I think you could, like, if I don't know what the footage is, because if it's just nothing but improvisation, then I guess it wouldn't. But clearly they could see in that point that you can extend some of these things and make it work and make it play. Yeah. So I don't think that's far off.
You talking about all the extra footage that they filmed, it would be cool if like every time on the series, like they were flipping through the TV channels, if that would like pop up and be like a little Easter egg, just different parts of it. That would have been really cool if they would have pulled that off.
Yeah.
Another thing I appreciate about the show that I want to point out is that it does talk about more than one type of vampire.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool. Energy vampires are they are something else. We had the council scene with the regular vampires, and then we had the council scene with the energy vampires, and they were literally trying to feed off of each other the whole scene, and it's minor inconveniences that irritate people. They basically feed off of emotion.
Yeah.
And sitting there and watching that whole scene played out, I'm sitting there thinking if I was in that situation, I would have already died. Because it was so irritating. And out of all of the vampires, let's be real, is it Collins, you said?
Yeah, Colin.
He is Colin Robinson. That's
Colin
yeah.
Colin Robinson. Yes. You have to say it a certain way.
He's just so, out of all of them, he's down to earth. And I love when he points out things to them like, I'm the only one that pays my bills. And then you go down into his room and it's just this terrible, terrible place. And I've never been more uncomfortable watching a show than when him and Nadja were talking and he was like trying to get busy with Nadja. It's like, ooh. But I don't know. I felt like there were some times, especially when you watch him. This was a weird thing about the show to me. And I don't know if you felt this way or not. This was the only thing about the show that kind of made me like, it didn't make me not enjoy the show or anything like that. It didn't take away from the show. It just sort of gave me pause for a moment. And maybe it's because of the fact that it was on TV forever ago. I was never a big fan of The Office. Like, I liked The Office, but it wasn't like something that I didn't go crazy over it like a lot of people did.
Now, are you talking about the American Office or the British Office?
The American. I watched the British. I didn't mind the British version of The Office. The American version I thought was okay too. Like, both of them they're good in their own ways. I like things about both of them, but I was never fully invested. It probably had to do a lot with where I was at in my life at that time when I watched.
Understood.
If I'm being honest. If I came back to them, I think I'd probably enjoy them a little more. But every time we would follow Colin, even if he was at home, I felt like I was watching an episode of The Office a little bit. And I think it just has to do with the aesthetic behind him.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure. I'm not sure if you get where I'm coming from with that, but to me, it gave me pause for a minute, and I almost feel like the showrunners did that on purpose. I feel like they wanted you to feel like you were always in an office setting whenever you saw him on camera.
Yeah.
Because it was like he was trying to feed off the people that were watching him as well. So I appreciate that about the show too. It's like, it's a little thing, it's a very subtle thing, but I feel like it was something that was purposeful.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, hell, that episode where he actually went on a rampage in his office, like, I was not expecting that. I was like, holy shit. Because when he talked about being an energy vampire, I thought, is he just bullshitting? Like, is he just saying that he's a vampire, but he says, I'm...
So you can live with him?
Yeah. And then when you actually saw his power in action, it was like, oh, shit, all right then. It's like, damn.
That was the same episode where didn't his head get really big?
I think so, yeah.
And then he made copies of himself, and all the copies of himself ended up dying because they all basically argued themselves to death.
Yeah.
Oh man.
There's a lot of good stuff in this. The movie and the TV show, I think that's the beauty of both, is you have different characters, you have different adventures that they all go on, and just, they're both so beautiful in their own right. I mean, put them side by side with one another. I guarantee that you'll love both. I don't think that there's a reason you can't like one over the other, or you can love them equally. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
And I feel like there's something for everyone who at least likes vampires.
Yeah.
I would say. And don't go in thinking that it's going to be, full-fledged horror or anything like that, because it's very much slapstick, it's comedy.
But it can get gory.
But it's, yeah. And that was another thing I appreciated about the show. It's not afraid to have its moments where it's reminding you that these are blood-sucking creatures. These are monsters. Especially the scene with I can't think of his name. One of Guillermo's friends gets turned into a vampire. I think they're one of the groups that are planning to kill the vampires, and then he gets a night job at a convenience store.
Was that Derek? I think it's
I think
was his
it might have
name.
been.
I feel like it was Derek. I
Right.
could be wrong. But yeah, I know who you're talking
And
about. Yeah.
Guillermo goes to him and is like, "Turn me into a vampire," and he bites him, and there's blood going everywhere, and it's a really gory scene. But through the whole scene, he's like, "I'm gonna have to clean all this up," and like they're still having comedic moments even with all of the crazy stuff that's going on.
See, that reminds me, like, there was a scene in the movie similar to that. It was, which one was it? Viago, I think. Taika Waititi's character had a woman brought up to the room, and it was like all sensual, and just walking over to her, and he's like, ooh, ooh, and you just think it's all going to be sexual and everything like that, and he goes, leans in, and takes a bite, and she's like, like that, and next thing you know, it's like, and there's just blood squirting out of her, and he's sitting there just like, trying to drink it all and shit. It's just, it's gross and funny at the same time, you know? It's just like perfect balance, man.
And as weird as it sounds, when I see scenes like that, it takes me back to something that's not even related. I mean, it's about vampires, but it always takes me back to the scene in Dracula, Dead and Loving It, where they're staking her heart, and there's blood just pouring. And he's like, "There's so much blood," and you know, he's like, "What do you expect? She just ate." And he's like, "She's almost dead. Hit her again." He's like real leery, and he's like, "How much more blood could she possibly have?" Does it again. Blood just pours out. Comes out again. "She's almost dead. She's dead enough." Like that whole scene, that plays out in my mind every time I see in this show, when I see like a lot of blood or something happen. And there is one other thing I want to like kind of point out. The cast of this show, I feel like they work really well together. Like they have a good relationship.
Yeah.
And we've talked about that before. You can tell when a cast really gets along.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes you feel like the scenes are playing out in real time. Like you're really it makes you feel like you're really following a real group of vampires that are like family. And one scene that really really sticks with me, I believe it's when they first get caught by the council, and it's all three. It's Laszlo, Nandor, and Nadia, and they're put into that like open space while the sun's coming up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then Colin and Guillermo come and save them, and they all turn into bats, and they get in the cage, and they've got it covered. And Colin keeps making jokes about pulling the cover off while they're walking down the road in the sunlight. Like to me, that's real. It's like, "Oh, I'm gonna kill you. Oh, I'm gonna kill you." And you know, he's joking with them clearly, but they're freaking out about it. And it's like, you guys really act like you're just this really super fucked up family that loves each other. So, you know, the dynamic is there. And I don't know if it would have worked if they would have done different casting. Like, I think they did the casting perfectly for this show.
Right.
Honestly, Laszlo, I'll say it, Laszlo is probably my favorite character.
And it's hard not
something...
to like him, you know?
Yeah, it's just, there's something about Matt Berry. It's like, I feel like when he's in something, people gravitate toward him.
Yeah.
I like Nandor and I like Nadia too. Don't get me wrong. I like, as far as the vampires go, I even like Colin. Like, I like all the characters. Vampire-wise, I like all of them, and I like Guillermo, but I like him for different reasons than the others. You know, Guillermo is more of like he's serious, but he gets put into comedic situations. Right. Everybody else they're being serious, but they're being serious in a comedic way. Right. Like what they think is serious is actually really funny. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, it's just, you know, something about Matt Berry. I've liked him since one of his jokes that I love to hear him talk about all the time. He stands up at a podium and he's saying, "To my ever-loving wife," and he talks about all the times he's asked for sex and all the ways that she's turned him down. And, you know, it's things like, "It's too hot, it's too cold, my parents are in the other room, my hair's a mess, this, that, and the other," like all these reasons. And I think it's his voice.
Yeah, I would say
the way he presents things. He's just got this, he really does. He has this like charm to him. I really think he does. And it makes you want to hear what he says, you know, and it makes you enjoy what he says. And in this role as Laszlo, even when he's saying the most ridiculous things, I'm like, I could just listen to this guy talk. I like hearing him talk.
Dude, one of the things, it's the simplest thing, but I get cracked up every time he says it. And I think there are just some people who can say something a certain way. You know what I mean? And it hits differently than somebody else saying it, you know? And yeah. I feel like he has that ability. So when he's just like, something happened, something went wrong, and it's silent for a second, he's like, "Shit, I don't know what it is about that, but it's just his delivery of that one word. It sells the whole joke for some reason.
Well, and I just saw an interview with him. They were talking about the show, and he got asked if a lot of people yell the word bat at him because he, when he turns into a bat on the show, he yells bat. And he said, yeah. He said, actually, it happens all the time. And he said, I'm used to it, though, because people always holler something at me. He said that he was on a show like years ago, and there's a scene where he's like in the doorway and he yells, "Father!" And he said, I'd have random people walk up to me and just yell "Father" at me. So he's like, I'm used to it. But yeah, I mean, even when he yells "bat," I'm sitting there and I'm like, I wonder if I can yell that like him. So I'm randomly yelling "bat" to myself, trying to do a terrible impression of him. And let's put it this way. His voice is so popular that he's in the Fallout series. He talks about how he sold his voice to the robots in the series. And then years down the road, when he's talking about harvesting her organs and everything, it's his voice, and you can't help but enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that I think that's why he's my favorite character in the whole show. He's hilarious in it.
Yeah.
And I like the Baron. I wish we would have seen more of the Baron. I think we got a good amount of the Baron, but I would like to see more of him. Because he's still rooming with, what they call him, the Ancient One, like the oldest vampire.
Yeah.
Who's really like a big puppy dog. Let's be real. He's like a big dog, pretty much. I love it. They figured out how to get food. They live in the remote cabin, and they're using an Airbnb to get people to come stay so they can feed on them. I'm like, that's great.
Yeah.
Modern problems require modern solutions.
That's right. Speaking of people with
was there anything
unique voices, I did want to shout out one other cast member who actually recently got added as a full cast member, even though she's been in every damn season up until, I think she's been there from day one. I don't think she's been a prominent member up until the most recent season, but Kristen Shaw, who plays, I think they just call her the guide. She's the one that took them to the council, and then now suddenly she's kind of become their...
she floats around and
she's got that...
Yeah.
I can't do her voice, but she's just got a very unique... And she, I'd seen her... I wouldn't even know who she is had it not been for Flight of the Conchords, but that's where I first noticed her. And, of course, she does Louise on Bob's Burgers, which I you know what? I know this is a little tangent off to the side here, but I've recently watched all of Bob's Burgers and, started from the start and was like, I don't feel like I've really watched the show. And got into it, and by God, it's such a great show. I think it's underrated.
Oh, it is.
100%. Really underrated.
100%. Have you seen the movie?
Yeah. I added that to the whole list. I was just like, I'm going to go through as soon as we get to season, wherever that falls into place, I'm going to watch it too. And it's a really underrated show because I never hear anyone talk about it. But it's
and it's really heartfelt too.
Yes.
Yeah, it's heartfelt, and it actually does talk about some serious issues that people don't really think about, and especially from a dad's standpoint.
Oh yeah, I relate to Bob so hard.
Yeah, no, I get where you're coming from. That's one of those shows that when it's on, I'm flipping to it and I'm actually watching it. I'll be honest, I probably should do what you did and just stream it because I know I haven't seen all of it.
Yeah, it's on.
But it is one of those shows.
It's on Hulu, so just start in. That's what I did. I was just like, I'll start from square one and just watch an episode where we can. And I don't know. I got to the end of it. I mean, we're kind of caught up now to where it's like brand new episodes, which they're not coming out all that frequently, which I've noticed is kind of odd. But I'll just take it whenever it comes out. I don't care.
I've noticed that with a lot of things lately, though. Like a lot of the animated shows, like American Dad and Family Guy and all that. Like all of that's really slow. It's not. They're not releasing nearly as much as they used to. You used to have a new episode pretty much every week, and now you're lucky if you get one or two a month.
Yeah.
So.
But Kristen Shaw, I'm glad she was in the show. Great addition. She
had the love interest of Guillermo. She was trying to bang him, I think, earlier in the show, and it was so funny because one moment she was all over him, and then the next moment she was like, "It's forbidden," and everything else. Yeah. Which I remember. I'm glad you got to finish it so far. I'm still behind. I'm behind now.
Yeah. No, I started it, and I guess at first like I was trying to get into the mindset of it because I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it. Because again, like I said, I had my reservations, but I was trying to just be like, put that shit aside. Allow yourself to get to know these characters and embrace them. And once it really started getting going, I was like, all right, I'm with it now. And then it was just started watching, burning through episodes. You know what I mean? So it took a minute. And again, just understand that, like, if you have those hangups like I do, where you think something's going to be inferior to it, just give yourself a moment to adjust. That's all I'm saying. You know, if you've watched the movie and you've been waiting on watching the show because you weren't sure, just, it's all part of the same universe. It's all part of the same thing, just a different group, and just adjust to it. You'll trust me, these characters are fun. If you want to hear more of Nando, I can tell you what is good about the show and what is good about the movie. The show has Nandor, and the movie does not, so you could say that it's not as good. That is what I'm trying to say.
Now, and the episodes aren't very long either. I think they're like 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes.
I'd say 30 is about the average.
I was going to say.
Maybe a little
somewhere
less.
right in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, I mean, by the time an episode's done, at least for me, when an episode would be done, I'd be like, really? We're done already? Because I would be getting invested right toward the end. But then they started doing, where they sort of continued off and they sort of built upon it, and the story arcs started to get bigger. And even though Guillermo says that things never change around there, I do think that the characters they've grown, but sometimes I feel like they've grown in weird directions that don't work for the problems at hand, but that's what makes it funny.
Yeah. I mean, very much the relationship between Nandor and Guillermo themselves. I mean, he's done everything. Like, it's such an odd dichotomy because you understand where Nandor's coming from about having him as a familiar, but you also relate to the frustrations. Granted, we're not all sitting here waiting for our turn to become a vampire or anything, but again, you understand that frustration, being promised something, and someone's just like, not today, not today. That's relatable for anybody. And
very much so.
So that's your connection. That's how you can relate to Guillermo in that way, and that frustration that comes with it is like, fuck it, I don't want to be here. And then when Nandor gets upset, you can't help but be like, no, you have been mistreating this boy, and he's been loyal to you. I mean, my God, how loyal Guillermo is. I mean, my God. And yet he still gets the shaft. So when he does do what he did, you're just like, well, dude, I mean, this is what happens because you've been dicking him around for so long. So you can be mad about it all day long, but you did this to yourself.
Oh, man.
That pretty much changes every fucking thing. That's all I'm saying.
Oh.
But I don't really know what more I can say about it. I mean, I could just do voices all day. I'd be fine with that.
We could do a whole episode of that. We really could.
I was doing the bloody disco 100 years before any of you fuckers.
Him and all of his old porns that he did.
Oh my God, the porn videos. Jesus Christ.
That episode in its own right is just hilarious. And a few other things, just real quick, before we close out here. Nadia and her human love interest, that whole arc was hilarious.
Yeah.
I love when they meet the old ghost versions of themselves because they're vampires, so they have no souls, but their spirits couldn't pass on.
Yeah.
So they're helping their souls pass on, which I thought was an interesting concept. Like, I would never have thought of that, and I've never seen that play out in another vampire movie or film or series. So seeing that actually happen in this series was kind of a really refreshing thing, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
But yes, if you're listening and you have not watched the movie, you have not watched the show, do it.
Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff in there. You'll know pretty soon when you start watching either or. Because I mean, I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't even say you have to watch one before the other. You can enjoy them however you wish because there's no thread outside of just characters. So pick one, whichever one. Like, if you want a taste of it, if you just want to see if it's up your alley, go for the series. Just watch the first episode, see if you kind of enjoy the humor and what they're doing, and then you'll know. Because I understand some of the approach to this type of comedy. It's not for everybody. And there are some of the shows that are like this documentary, like you said, office style type comedies that don't really hit the same way. They're just not as good, I guess. Like they don't really know how to approach it proper. But I feel like this is one of those that did it right, that knew how to approach the situation. And I think it is the situation itself that makes the concept work more. Very much what you were also kind of advocating for about the monsters. I can see that being an interesting take. Granted, I know people would make the comparisons, but we're just ripping off what we do in the shadows. Yeah, but it's absurd, and it would work.
Yeah.
You know,
That's the thing. It's so absurd that it does work.
right. So I don't know. I really think the concept was great, and I'm glad I gave it a shot. I'm glad I at least gave the movie a shot for starters, because it was one of those that I was looking at. It's like, it seems like an interesting concept, but I'm not sure if it's for me. And I changed my tune pretty quick after getting into it. I was like, no, this is right. So I'm glad I gave the show a shot too, because I got to get out of my head sometimes about how I perceive things, and I should have known. Yeah. I should have trusted that Jermaine and Taika would have done it justice, and they did. So
yeah, I'm really glad that you did watch it, because I know we've talked about it a few times, and I know that way back when we talked about it, like one of the first times, you were like, yeah, it's one of those things I'm on the fence about, but I'm glad you jumped over and gave it the watch, because it's phenomenal. And anybody that's listening, you guys can watch it on Hulu. I think it's still, all of it's still on Hulu. So if you have Hulu, you can watch it completely free. And then if you like it, you can pick up the movie. Honestly, if I could get a physical copy once the show closes out, if I could get a physical copy of the show, like a box set, I'd probably buy the show, in all honesty, because it's something that I would be okay with owning and being able to watch, because I think you could, maybe not watch it all the time on repeat, because you'd probably get tired of the same old jokes, but you could pop it in and watch it every so often and still really enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a nice film that you can just pop in at any time and kind of give a watch. It's like I said, it's probably about 90 minutes, very, very short. So it's an easy breezy watch and a lot of fun, I think. So, Ramblers, have you seen What We Do in the Shadows? Have you seen the movie? Have you seen the show? Have you seen both? What do you think of it? Tell us on social media at Horror Ramblings, or send us an email at horrorramblings@gmail.com. Join us on our Facebook group, or join us on Discord. You can even find us on Instagram. If you want to throw in a few bucks over at Patreon, you can do that at patreon.com/pencilpaperproductions. Leave us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcasting app, and tell your friends to do that on their favorite podcasting platform as well. Check out Spotify to see if we've posted up any questions and polls. And finally, if you want one central hub, all things over at pencilpaperproductions.com/horror-ramblings. Links are in the show notes down below.
And remember, stay spooky out there.
You said it just right.
This has been the Horror Ramblings podcast. Join us next time for even more.
This has been a Pencil and Paper Podcast Network production.